before I came to Tapestry, which was Coach at the time 2.5 years ago, I spent 25 years in the CPG industry. And I've worked with a lot of the people that are here, and I'm a huge fan of augmenting our expertise. But when I was talking to Nick about the subject matter, it caused me to reflect a little bit of what I walked into when I came here to Coach. And it was before we had stood up a centralized and professional procurement group. It hadn't existed here before. And it was on the heels of a very savings-focused third-party sourcing event, which left a very poor taste in our stakeholders' minds of what the procurement process is. So that's what I walked into willingly, and was able to convince Nick to come along and join the fun as well. But what it got me to thinking about was, when you really think about how do you ultimately create a competitive advantage, forget about maturity model and all that stuff, because it's all part of how you get there. It really got me thinking about, it's really this, what Nick said, it's the non-sexy stuff. It truly is the global procurement fundamentals, which are really foundational to having in place so that you truly can get to the point where, you move beyond savings, right? And you're talking about GPO, you're talking about things like blockchain. You're talking about GPO in a way that you can actually have tangible discussions with your stakeholders. Without having the right fundamentals in place, the discussions really fall flat. So what I want to walk you through is the journey that we've been on, and part of how we've built up our organization over the last 2 years to get to a point where, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of augmenting, like I said before, with tools which are absolutely crucial. But really, when you think about it, this is very similar to one of your slides as well. Let's face it, the visuals do help. But the bottom line is we built a structure. By the way, a lot of this stuff is going to sound like a no-brainer, but until you actually execute them and truly put them in place, from our perspective, you just don't have the framework. So we built a structure. We put together the right organization. We staffed it with cross-functional talent, and I'm not talking about just dyed-in-the-wool procurement people. I'm talking about people from the business, people from IT, people from marketing. Which is the background I came from. I spent half my career in marketing before I made the leap to the dark side of procurement, which I realize is a very odd transition. But for me, it was an awesome move, and once I went there, I never looked back. Your tools are part of this fundamental structure as well. Delivering value, that is what it is. We established our team, we stood it up, started sourcing categories like transportation, packaging. All these are very fundamental things, but until you can actually start putting tangible material results on the table and actually start getting your stakeholders to take realization of, wow, I am actually getting more value out of my supply base with your help. That helped us build the credibility, not just with the stakeholders on what they're seeing and realization from the supply base, but also with our finance partners who recognize that, wow, we're actually delivering value that we can bake into the financial plan. They had never done that before. And that ultimately led to senior leader support from our CEO down of our involvement in things. And being global. We have a team that is all over the world. Most of us are here in New York. We're in the UK, Shanghai, Tokyo, Singapore. And I've worked in companies where we've had a global department as well, but it was really aspirational. Really all it was a department that was called global, but we just had regions all around the world. We've gotten to the point where we've been able to figure out how do you connect the dots on the categories that truly can be global, like fixtures for our stores, some of our packaging components, where it's actually tangible and where we can connect the dots around the world and truly drive scalable value. That's what we put in place. Again, these are foundational. I'm not going to go through that. I'm actually going to limit my number of slides. But this actually gives you kind of a visual of what our evolution has been. So, really, in 2015, we had a department that was, brand new, very executionally oriented. We then spent the next 18 months building the department with some third-party help because we also had to deliver some tangible results while we were building the engine to where we are today. And, it's a professional, functional organization where we now can really have the luxury of assess our categories, beyond the ones where we have them staffed. You know, one thing that's important, because one of the other speakers mentioned it, you know, we don't staff for every category. You know, there's categories like, you know, we were talking about benefits earlier today. You know, we're not going to staff somebody who's an expert in benefits exchanges. When it's time for that category to come up, we buy the buy. You know, we bring in the external expert. We do that with media. You know, we do that with some of our other material categories because we recognize that, you know, we don't need to have on staff all the time these very specific category experts. We're going to leverage the external network for that and have our category leads that work with our stakeholders and, you know, can be that face to the internal stakeholder to provide that level of stability. That's where we are today. And this is really rooted in our values. You know, Nick's probably going to yawn because I show this all the time to our team, but it's something that really is the cornerstone of how we work here. It's all about stepping up and leading. You know, we're not there to run RFPs. We are truly business partners with the categories that we support. Being trusted sounds really corny, but you know, we've gotten to the point where we have enough transparency with not only our stakeholders but our finance business partners. They do trust us. We're involved, and it gives us the opportunity now that we are more engaged to actually look at how do we go deeper? How do we look at areas of the business that maybe we ought to consider BPO? And then for all of our people leaders, it's practicing servant leadership, which is really foundational to career growth. So if it sounds like I'm bragging about the Tapestry Procurement Group, I am, because in almost 30 years in the business, I've never worked with a finer team. And you know, that's ultimately how you develop a competitive advantage. And when you can get to that point of laying the groundwork of these foundational things, coupled with leveraging the external network, is really when you've arrived. So thank you. And I don't know if we're doing questions now or if I should hold for the panel. Okay.
Hold for the panel, that's it.
All right.
That's it. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.